Hello. Okay, sorry. So I wasn't planning on speaking. This is just a really exciting program that I got introduced to 3.5 years ago when I started working for PhDD. It's easier now. It's our PATH program, our Projects and Assistance with Transitioning from Homelessness. And it's an amazing program that we've had that not a lot of people know about in the populations that we serve. I say we because I do a lot of work with them, and I know Winnie is going to talk a little bit about this, but when I started, we had 3 PATH programs that were in Billings, View, and Missoula, and since April of 2022, we added 3 more. And so for our states as an entirety, we cover the entire state with those 6 programs now. And so I'm just gonna, please, don't leave, you've got to listen to them. They have so much information. They're readily available to answer your questions. And then, connect with them afterwards. You're just gonna get a wealth of information and go, wow, we have this here and have it here. So I'll just turn it over to them.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate the introduction. I'm the program specialist for the PATH team in Missoula, and my name is Christine Mylene. I drove up here with my colleague Winnie to help Mylene, our PATH lead here in Kalispell, let them introduce themselves as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Winnie Lohof. I'm the PATH Care Coordinator, the team lead for Missoula.
And I'm Mylene, Widner, and I am the PATH lead here in Kalispell, Montana, the newest baby program in the state.
First slide, please. Thank you. So before we start, before we start, just to be clear, if any of you have any questions at all during this presentation, we would love for you to ask them. We all love educating the pieces about houselessness and mental health, and just how amazing this program is. So first of all, the origin of PATH was from the Stuart B. McKinney Homeless Assistance Amendment of 1990. The original act came out of the 80s. Named after Stuart B. McKinney. He was a United States legislator who after he got sick camping outside with houseless advocates in the winter of '86. Due to complications of HIV and the sickness, he passed away, and so in honor of him, the act was named. This act is kind of it feels like it covers any single thing that is related to homelessness or houselessness. Programs are coming out of that act, and PATH was born out of that. Next slide, please. The origins of Montana, PATH of Montana, we have been open, well, the Billings, Missoula, and Butte programs have been online for over 20 plus years. And then in April 2020, or 2022, as Jamie said, PATH in Kalispell, Great Falls, and Bozeman opened. We have to appreciate Teen really quick. She started working with us in January, and I was so busy that she wrote the grant for the Kalispell PATH program. So we're really lucky to have her. Okay, next, please. Thank you.
And I just wanted to finish up a little note on the number of sites across Montana. I originally came from Billings, and I worked at the PATH program, which is the longest running PATH program in the state of Montana, and I had the privilege and honor of being trained under Carmen Gonzalez, who was PATH lead in Billings for about 20 years. All right, so PATH, we are very busy individuals because we cover every major aspect of a person's life, where when you're houseless, when you're struggling with homelessness, if you didn't already have issues being homeless, are starting to bring out issues that you didn't realize, you had to deal with. So of course, in order to locate people, we have to complete outreach. So that means we're out in the community, we're working with, if we have homeless outreach teams, in Kalispell we have Kyle Waterman, who is working with our development of our homeless outreach team, our HOT team. We have a lot of collaborative partners in Missoula. They work a lot doing outreach at the homeless camps. We look for camps. If you have ideas of where individuals are camped, maybe individually, please give us a call so we can see if we can connect them with either mental health services or other service providers where they might fit and have other higher priority needs. So we also, of course, because we deal with people who are struggling with severe mental illnesses or severe debilitating mental illnesses, we of course work in collaboration with our partners, Western Montana Health or other regional mental health agencies, providers. We work with private providers if we have somebody who's already working with an individual provider. We work with flathead health departments in each region. We link them up with our PACT program, which is our sister provider who continue with ongoing services, medication management, therapy. Okay. And we also, if that isn't enough, we also help individuals apply for disability, for Social Security disability or Social Security insurance. We are certified through SAMHSA. We work in conjunction with the Social Security Administration. So we do, each unit, we do 10 applications per year minimum, and they are very comprehensive. We work with the individual in accessing and acquiring all their medical history. We help them fill out all the forms. We take them to doctor's appointments. We take them to mental health providers, anything that they need to get done in order to address all the criteria in the specific disability category in which they fall. We submit that in a nice little packet. Sometimes I feel like putting a bow on it because it's so much work. We can end up with boxes and boxes of medical records. And it cuts down the wait time for those individuals, and it improves our application rate to 60%. First time out, they don't, they're not waiting around, applying 1, 2, 3 times, getting denied. And then housing, of course, which is a major obstacle, major barrier for most Americans in trying to find affordable housing. For our individuals, for our clients, it's even more difficult. The cost of living, the wait list for low-income housing is really our main challenge at this point in time. And I'm going to turn it over to Team.
Thanks. Well, next slide, please. All right, and this one, PATH connects with as many resources as we can within our communities. And given that nature of this work, it looks different in each community. So who Mylene is connecting with in Kalispell often is different than who we connect with in Missoula. But that being said, the Human Resource Development Council is huge as far as with our voucher assistance. That is probably the biggest point for us in housing navigation when we're working with a client, is seeing what vouchers are available to them, ones that we can help expedite because you're coming to us typically already in crisis because you are experiencing homelessness and you have that severe mental illness on top of that, and we try as quickly as we can to get someone into housing, but it is unfortunately quite a wait a lot of the time too. And for Kalispell specific is the community action partnerships. I know Mylene's working more closely with them and just trying to form more collaborative relationships so we can better serve our clients. That being said too, like in Missoula, we have the Missoula Housing Authority. They issue our permanent supportive housing vouchers, and that's really great long-term vouchers that are really all-encompassing. It's just such a good resource. It's hard to find, however, sometimes places that will accept those vouchers. That also comes into the housing navigation piece that we really work closely with clients on and say, okay, you know, if you get turned down from a place, that's not your fault. You're doing everything you can and you're working closely with us. And we're gonna keep trying. As long as we're trying, we're gonna get somewhere. And key piece, I think, in Kalispell and for Missoula is the local continuum of care. For Missoula, that's MCES, and Mylene, do they go any other acronym for Kalispell? It's just the coordinated entry. Okay, yeah. That I appreciate so much. It's really unique in that we get to connect weekly with providers in the area to discuss clients. They have an ROI that we have them sign initially, and from there we can say, okay, hey, I just saw John, and he's struggling with this right now, and we're working on this piece towards housing navigation. Maybe someone, if they're attending from HRDC, has some good info, and we can start taking really actionable steps towards housing solutions with them and towards mental health solutions as well, as far as, hey, you're already working with this client. How's it going? Are you covering things you need to? Are you getting where you want to be? And just being able to check in with each other is huge. And of course, we do benefit assistance too, so we're working closely with the DPHHS. That's part of where our funding is housed at too. And we hope clients apply for SNAP and Medicaid and all those things too. All right, well, next slide, please.
Okay, criteria. So PATH is really funky. We can work with just about anyone as long as you are literally houseless or imminently houseless. So imminent houseless has a lot of different definitions depending on where you look. But the government definition typically does not include someone who's couch surfing. So essentially, if someone is houseless and they are utilizing their supportive services, such as their family or friends, to stay out of the streets or the shelters, they are not considered houseless, and then they lose a lot of opportunity for supportive services. So PATH, we're able to work with anyone who is imminently houseless. So that means, yeah, couch surfing. But it also means evictions, or their landlord has decided to renovate the apartment, so they only have a couple, like maybe a month or two, to be able to find new housing. And we all know that in a housing crisis, it's almost impossible to find housing in that time. So at which point, maybe you get to utilize your supportive services and become couch surfing, once again, creating that cycle. So yeah, we are able to work with just about anyone as long as they are houseless or imminently houseless, or and are struggling with a mental health or co-occurring substance use disorder. There's a difference between SMI, severe mental illness, and SDMI, severe and disabling mental illness. And while we are able to work with someone with an SDMI, sometimes they are not always the best fit for our program. We're all very small programs. Teen and I, we're like 2/3 of the program for Missoula. So we only have one other person. Mylene is having her full team soon, and she is 1/3 of her team. So if someone maybe needs a lot more supportive services than what PATH is able to offer, we make sure if they've been referred to us or if we've been working with them within outreach, that they have access to other services. So that might mean that we refer them to PACT or MACT. I don't really know what MACT stands for. And we make sure that if you need more services, you get those services. We also make sure that those long-term support services are there once we finish working with a client, because after about 3 months of working, after someone has been housed for 3 months, we have to say goodbye. So we're constantly focusing on the houseless piece. But that means that we get to make sure that once someone moves into their home, that they have all the supportive services to be able to flourish, because we don't want someone coming back to us in 3 months. We want someone calling us in 3 months and saying, I am so happy. Okay, next slide, please. Yes. So I can speak into the microphone. SMIs are something like a severe depression, severe anxiety, whereas PTSD, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, I look at it as kind of a middle ground, almost a bridge for SMI versus SDMI. It really falls into whether or not someone is able to be more fully independent, or if they need like a lot of support, or if they're in acute crisis. Severe mental illness.
Are there any incentives or programs that you're working on actual landlords and property rental people that are kind of reverse doing it, where they're actually what they do? Or I know the housing crisis is a problem, but is there incentives for property management or landlords to actually take on clients?
That's a fantastic question. So what they asked was if there are any incentives or programs working with landlords to get them to actually take people with SMIs or SDMIs or people who are experiencing houselessness. So yes and no. Missoula, for a while, we had a program that Risk Mitigation Fund. The Risk Mitigation Fund was through Homeward, and essentially if a person took a class that was like basically like financial basics, it was and renting basics, it was called Rentwise, they would be able to apply for the Risk Mitigation Fund. And the Risk Mitigation Fund would back the person by $1,000. So if the person moved out, or if they weren't paying rent, for example, the landlord could come to Homeward and say, this person's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We need assistance, or hey, they moved out and the apartment is trashed. $1,000 would be fronted to the landlord automatically just to deal with repairs. And I think that would have worked a lot better if it was not $1,000, it was more like $5,000 or $10,000. Sadly, because it was not really used, that program went away. But for Missoula, we are constantly working with landlords. We have an Instagram, and it's not only educational, but we get to say thank you to the landlords who actually rent to us. In Missoula, professional property management has been amazing, very willing to work with us, and very flexible. And we brought them donuts and flowers, and they looked a little bit terrified of us. But
deer in headlights.
They had the deer in the headlights look. But we also posted on our Instagram, and they sent us an email later saying, thank you so much. Sorry for the deer in the headlights look. We just don't get very much appreciation. And so we try to appreciate the landlords who are actually willing to work with us. I wish that there was more of a risk mitigation fund. If I had the time in my job, I would 100% find that grant funding. So I really suggest, if there's any options for anyone to look for that kind of grant funding, I very much recommend that. And then also, I mean, we reach out to landlords and just explain to them what we're doing. Personally, my parents they own some rentals. I've been a live-in property manager, and I've also been on this side. And talking with landlords, even when it's very frustrating and there's some very obvious discrimination going on against our houseless individuals, I say, look, I understand. And I understand that there are not very many supports for you being a landlord and renting to someone who may be a risk. But the purpose of our program is to make sure that you don't have to worry about that risk, or if the risk arises, something happens, that you have the supports that you need. So I've had landlords call me 6 months down the line saying, I'm really struggling with this person you placed with me. How, like, please help me. And I have gone and de-escalated a client. I have gone and talked with them. If landlords have said, you know, well, what if this person destroys the property? I say, here is a list of funding that may be able to cover at least a portion of the cost. It's ultimately about, yes, a landlord can, if they want to, be fairly discriminatory in Montana. We don't have an income discrimination law in Montana, so they can charge 3 times the rent. They don't have to take housing vouchers. But if you talk to them like, okay, I get it. If you sympathize with them, just as how we have to sympathize with our clients when they're in a mental health crisis, it goes a long way. And I think landlords often feel in the dark and saying, I get it. I'm here to help. You can call me anytime in the future if you're having a problem. That's very helpful. But also telling a landlord if your client or their resident is okay with it, that these are all the supportive services that they have. This is the phone number of their case manager. So if you're having a hard time with them or they're not returning your phone calls or emails, maybe you reach out to their case manager, because that person is going to be able to figure out the situation because they actually have a good relationship with the client or resident, rather than like a landlord power structure relationship. Yeah, Mylene.
I also wanted to add on to that, that by the time we get to the point of being able to house individuals, we have done a lot of work. We've established relationships with our clients. And we do a lot of preparation ourselves and talk to them about, okay, so what happened, what worked for you in the past when you were housed? Is there things that we can do, supports, some training that we can access for you so you can get to that, back to that place where you feel like, you know, you can become a good tenant, you know, a long-term tenant. We do a lot of screening. I have clients that I am currently working with who are not ready for housing. And so part of our job is being real honest with them and saying, it would be unethical of me to put you in housing right now without having you acquire certain types of services, and medication is typically a large piece of that. And we have a lot of clients who, you know, are resistant to that. So we have to work with them around, okay, so where can we start? Where can we go? What's the next step? Okay, and I currently have a client who is continuing to be adverse to medication. So I have to keep, and part of our model is to continually try to engage and really treat our clients with respect and dignity, and allowing them to partner, not allowing us, but really seeing them as a partner. And it's, you can see when, you know, they recognize that we are walking alongside them, we're not telling them what they need to do. So they have free choice. We have people who live on the streets who it's a life choice. And we have to learn how to accept that and not want to mother them or, you know, want them to be in a house, you know. But the individuals that want to be housed, we work very hard on their behalf and alongside them. So, yes.
Now, I live in Missoula, and River House closed its doors and stopped providing day treatment for services. And I'm wondering, do you ever, like with any of your clients or housing, do you ever insist that they go to a place like day treatment or go through voc rehab or employment or do something to prevent that from being isolated?
That's a really great question. So they're asking if we make our clients go to day treatment. Insist. If my client doesn't want to go, I'm not going to make them go. I will maybe bring it up regularly and be like, hey, it seems like you're feeling really isolated, or you're having a hard time adjusting to maybe housing. And so what can we explore some options for you for places to go or things to do during the day that makes you feel less isolated? And some people just say, absolutely not, I'm not gonna do that, and that's totally fine, because, you know, I'm not gonna make my lovely friend T here do something just because I want her to do something. And just because I would be so mad at her if she made me do that. I'd be so mad. And that would deteriorate a relationship. But if they wanna go, I'll transport them, 110%.
Yeah, like with me, I have a full learning disorder, and I have not wanted to hear that I need meds or need to stay clean, but I am very thankful for what above that people thought enough of me to say it to me anyway.
Exactly. I've also had, clients who they are in their recovery process and they also have a co-occurring disorder, and where we land is, okay, you're not allowed to do drugs in the house, and that's just it. And when you are ready to get services, get treatment, I'm here, I will make that referral, I will drive you whatever you need. But until then, if you're not ready, nothing's gonna happen. Yes?
Different states, and they try to administer aid to those that are in need at home.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I've actually not partnered with Consumer Direct, but I've partnered with the Severe and Debilitating Mental Illness Waiver, the SDMI waiver, and the Big Sky waiver, and they offer in-home care and supports for people when they want to stay at home. Yep. Okay. Oh, yes, sorry.
My question was on the homelessness you mentioned. I suppose my question is, when do you step in? Do you only step in once they are homeless? Because there are some people that are on that cusp. I do have several mental illnesses, and they keep raising the rent. So when do you step in? When I am on the street?
So,
or if there's a threat of that coming, and I am on SDMI and all of that.
If you are at risk of houselessness, we can work with you. So if you're looking at, okay, I might have a couple months left in my housing, or there's something going on, we're always happy to at least do a consult with you. I've never told someone like, oh, you're looking at like maybe 6 months. In 6 months, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. I'm happy to still sit with you and have a conversation. I can't maybe take you on as a client yet, just because it's too far away. But I still will talk with you and try to make a game plan. But if it's, I think, a couple months, yeah. If people are going to be houseless in 3 months, we're able to help them.
That could be where we're at.
In that case,
they keep raising $200, $300, $400 every time to bring us up to what they are charging now.
And it's unfair and it's really hard. And yeah, if you are struggling, do you live in Kalispell? Missoula, okay.
The Housing Authority is a 3-year wait.
Mm-hmm. We're happy to talk to you after this. We can try to make a game plan maybe.
I think in regard to the housing matter, it's very important that the public become aware about how seriously the housing crisis affects those who are, at just making a living wage. Because what's happening now is with the rent increases and the lack of building, if local housing authorities, if local developers are not really pushing for and advocating for the building of more affordable housing, low-income housing, permanent supported living housing complexes. It's so competitive out there that people who are underserved and who struggle with multitude of issues, can't balance everything, and so they end up, that's why our homeless population has increased, and the numbers of sites that we need for PAP expand. That's what happened in Montana, as you can see from our statistics. And then once people end up on the street, we really have to work hard at engaging people. So if you can see the state statistics and the numbers served nationwide are very consistent. So we have like 100,000 people that were served last year nationwide. We were able to engage and enroll about half of those people, and the state rates are very similar because people don't trust. It's like, I've been through this, I've been through multiple applications, I've been denied, I don't, and what's the use? If I do get funding, if I do get a voucher, nobody will service them, nobody will accept them.
I guess one, it's always really hard to talk about priorities, but in terms of, if the policymakers were going to invest in either affordable housing without services or supported housing, is that like, does it just have to be a mix, or, if you can only get one, get this? How do you think about for that population that's so hard?
So
I'd be biased. Supportive housing.
Supportive housing is great. So in Missoula, we are opening the Trinity Project. And the Trinity Project there are two different locations. And one has a navigation center. It also has on-site transitional housing for houseless individuals. And let's see, there's going to be about 400 units available. The waitlist is currently open. Also, the Bellagio just opened their waitlist, and they're not supportive housing, but they are low-income housing in Missoula. But with the Trinity project, 30 units of one site are being prioritized for people with permanent supportive housing vouchers, and we're able to be working with the city to get people who have been identified as FUSE clients, so frequent users of services, so they're interacting with the hospitals and the police quite a bit, or they have a pretty high level of houseless chronicity. 30 of those people are going to be prioritized for housing at the Trinity. What I like to say is I would way rather be overprepared than underprepared. So if we can have supportive housing and someone would be like, hey, I'm super independent, I'm really okay, I don't need that. I would prefer them have that option than being like, I am struggling, I absolutely cannot be in housing unless I have someone coming in and checking in on me every day.
I know everyone feels this problem, so I'm asking if you hear of anything coming. I know it's not now. In Montana, especially post-COVID, we've really seen an influx because we want the heck out of the bigger cities that have struggled a lot, right? That means we have a lot of out-of-state companies buying up the property management and pulling their Section 8. Same thing, these people are just speaking of the struggles and everyone feels it. Is there anything coming down? They're going to, if they're going to support the housing, the vouchers are going to have to increase in order to secure the housing in our local economies. It's not there for low income.
Yeah, 100%. So Missoula, Montana is one of the biggest states in the United States. Missoula is about 75,000 people, give or take, and we have 51% of the housing vouchers. It is so hard to get a housing voucher anywhere else in Montana. And really, I like it because I'm able to house people more effectively and quickly. But in order to have something more quickly available, more accessible, we need to spread that out more, or keep quite a bit of housing vouchers in Missoula because we do need it, but also spread it out, spread the wealth around Montana. And then we also, if I could, I would make it it mandatory that you cannot say no to a housing voucher. You can say no to lack of housing history or poor credit, but a housing voucher should not be a reason that you are being denied.
I agree. So how do you see the spreading of the wealth happening? Because I agree with you. That's
Yeah.
where it falls, and
Yeah.
we're feeling it.
Totally.
But, so how do we spread that love?
Another solution is for developers and community leaders to really watch the HUD site and look for those proposals for bids for the various subsidized housing projects that are being let out for bid. Montana Board of Housing, needs to, work in collaboration with communities to increase the number of applications for those subsidized units or subsidized complexes.
But how do we spread the wealth?
Exactly. Back to the question, right?
The hardest part.
Yeah, we're in that with you. I can't stand up here and say I have an answer to it because we're in it together. I think the biggest thing is advocating at all levels that you can, whether it's showing up to city council meetings for public comment, or if you are connected with the continuum of care, start talking about it. Say, hey, how do we get more vouchers in our community? How do we get more property managers that are new here, new developers, to establish relationships and say, hey, you're a part of our community, and if you accept these vouchers, then you're playing an active role as a community member, and you're helping us sustain our lives here and sustain people continuing living here to work here. That's the struggle, and I would say it comes down to that advocacy piece. Yeah.
I was just going to add, that made me think of something. We have had 2 or 3 different changes in management in our complex in just the last 3 to 4 years. And when we first moved in, they said, we stopped taking vouchers right before you moved in because too much paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
It was too much paperwork for them.
Yeah.
That was their reason.
So you see that lack of community and trust and building relationships, and I think the education pieces too is having more resources available just there at the get-go for landlords, and maybe that needs to be coming from our continuum of care or our city officials. And beyond, like statewide, we need more policy surrounding housing and to protect our housing rights for our members, our citizens of Montana, I'll say. I forgot. I'll do the next slide because now I'm a little discombobulated, but next slide, please. Oh, okay, maybe we're there. So we're just kind of retouching on some things we already opened up with. Billings, Butte, Missoula, those are the 3 main PAC teams to start out with in the state of Montana. And again, it was just only in the last year that we opened Great Falls, Bozeman, and here in Kalispell. So with those groups, I know that Mylene's working really hard to get her program built here so she's ready to serve members of the community and take on more clients and build those relationships with property managers and with other community partners. I think that's pretty brief. Winnie, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, so if you want to contact us, we want to hear from you because we have at least suggestions. We have a lot of opinions too, but suggestions may be a little bit better. So Dana Gary is our lovely Jamie Hansen's number 2 right-hand man. And if you want to get in contact with any of the Montana teams, please give her a call or an email and she'll be able to get you in contact with one of us. And then below is Mylene Widner, I always want to say Wilder, she's a wild lady, and Angela Gage. They're the current 2 team members for the Kalispell team, and it sounds like they are hiring a 3rd person. However we can help, we want to hear from you, and yes.
I noticed the different towns that have your services. Is that the size of the town that allows you guys to serve them, or the smaller towns have?
That's a super good question. I think one of our state leads would be able to better answer that. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, so Missoula, before the Kalispell team came online, if people were calling me from Kalispell and I was able to take on a client, I would take them on. Same with, like, I've had clients out in Stevensville or Hamilton. And so essentially what we will try to do is, if someone is in that surrounding area, I like to think of it at least an hour away from the main place, we'll be able to try to help, or at least we can use like Zoom calls or something. We realize that in reality, you know, we need more people. Missoula, let's see, when data from coordinated entry, Missoula coordinated entry was pulled last week, we had about 700 people who are houseless at night in Missoula. So ideally, like, we would have 6+ people on the Missoula team. But as much as we can help other communities surrounding us, we will definitely try. Yes?
So along that same line, does your council and health ever encourage a person to move to a smaller community where they might have their community life, or you know,
yeah.
And then my second question is, the vouchers that we're talking about, are we talking about Section 8 vouchers, or are we talking about a state voucher?
So there's a lot. So for your first question, we don't make someone move to a different community unless they really want to. I have plenty of clients who, while they realize that it would be way easier to find housing elsewhere, they want to stay in Missoula, and maybe it's for medical reasons, maybe it's just because they have relationships built here or there. And so if that's the case, I'm not going to make anyone move. If they do want to move, if they're willing, we're going to make sure that they have all the supportive services that they need as much as possible. If my client moves out of town, I will drive out there a couple times after them being housed, just to check in and make sure that they're okay, because it is hard. It's, you know, getting into housing after being houseless is very isolating already, because you've lost that really widespread, constant community around you. And then moving to a completely different town is even more so. So we want to make sure that those supportive services are there. And then on the voucher side, you look like you, okay. Oh, yeah. So PATH is in every single state. All 50 states. We're also in all territories. So if someone decides, you know what, Missoula's not working out, I want to go to Portland, I can reach out to the state lead in Oregon and have them reach out to the Portland team, and hopefully we can transfer all services to Portland. So when my client gets off that bus, they're able to immediately, hopefully, be picked up at the station, but or at least have an appointment date. And then for housing vouchers, so Section 8, I kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but I look at it as an umbrella. And that's kind of like, we have the golden ticket of Section 8 where you can, it's portable throughout all the states. And then there are permanent supportive housing vouchers, which are based in chronicity. So someone has to have been homeless for a year consistently, or houseless for 4 times over 3 years in order to be eligible for that housing voucher. Then there are mainstream housing vouchers, which are kind of a little step under 811, or sorry, I'm jumping ahead. They're like a little step under Section 8, and they are it's less money coverage in terms of rent than a permanent supportive housing voucher, but it is, you are able to use it within, if you're, depending on the section, if you're in Western Montana, you can use it in Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli counties. Same with 811 vouchers, and 811 vouchers are project-based. So if you get into an apartment in an 811 voucher apartment, you can live there until the day you die if you want. But if you decide, oh, you know, Summit Property Management has an apartment that I like better and I want to move there, that 811 support will not move with you. So you lose that housing voucher support. Yes.
Done.
Dawn.
Thank you. So I first thing you said that population that I work with are neighbors, out, perhaps you could start with the village, tribal housing on that back end because we look at tribal housing. You guys have the resources to help us address that, and then later on, we can't get into housing.
Do you want to speak to that? Team has a client that's in this situation.
I do. I have a couple of clients with SOs, and the resources are not there. It's been such a difficult struggle over this past, some of them have been working with close to a year, and we've tried all these different avenues to try to reach some sort of housing solution. My client that has a sex offense, it's a really old one, it's from like early 90s, and yeah, he's done a lot. He has some disabilities, physical disabilities, and he's older now. We're looking into getting into an assisted living. Applied him for the Big Sky waiver. He has that, and we've been unable to get him into an assisted living because of that offense. And it's just, I think some of the things that we can do, it's very limited, is trying to look at appealing some of those offenses as well, as many letters of support as you can to get someone into housing. The DOJ website does have paperwork to file an appeal with the sentencing court or with the court that they reside at to try to get that record off of the registry anyways. And that's some of the avenues that I'm finding with that. And yeah, sorry, Mylene has lots of ideas too, and I agree. In Missoula, with our coordinated entry system, we have a housing list of property managements that will accept someone that has a felony, a violent offense, or a sexual offense, and we try to contact those property managements or build relationships with them. And again, when we're applying clients that do have that on their record or lengthy records, drug offenses, to write letters about, hey, this is what I've been doing, this is my history, I'm working on this, I've been trying to make, better choices as far as my safety and my community safety, and that has been helpful. I know that we have got clients with rather lengthy histories. Winnie just got one of her clients into a place who had 6 felonies, and we thought, it might be impossible, but it's happening. So it takes a long time. We have to have a lot of patience and just to keep working on it, and something will fall into place.
And one thing I'd add to that is I'm not real clear, since I'm so new to Council, I can still count I'm new here. But when I worked in Billings for the PATH program, there were specific complexes. They were small, but the Billings Housing Authority, which is now known as Homebrook, had a couple of complexes specifically for people who had criminal history charges where it made it darn near impossible for them to be housed elsewhere.
Do you guys work with homeless teens?
Did you say homeless teens, like teenagers? Sadly, we can't. We can work with people who are over the age of 18. I have worked with a variety of kiddos exiting foster care, though. Actually, in the United States, there's a pretty significant pipeline from foster care into houselessness, and that is very hard. A kind of loophole I have found, at least in Missoula, is that we are starting to have a lot of private dorms. So they're like private-owned dorms. Everyone gets like their own room, but it's like maybe a 4-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment. And the Sawyer in Missoula is willing to take housing vouchers. You get into a weird limbo with whether or not you can have a roommate on a housing voucher. Missoula Housing Authority is against it. Looking with HUD, they should not be. So that's a little bit of a weird gray zone. But foster youth to independence vouchers, so those might not be an option with that kind of housing. Yeah. What is it? YHDP, Youth Demonstration Houses Project. I can't remember exactly what it stands for. Through Human Resource Council, that that program will pay for that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
We have Section 8 officer. Sometimes I think that they were forced into negating my rental agreement because my case manager didn't know that I had a new person that week or that would support it.
I'm sorry, did you lose your voucher?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That is really, really hard. You can appeal that decision. Good. Yeah. It's really difficult when you are, working with a case manager or in-home assistance because you need it, but when they drop the ball, it's really, really hard. And it's good that you're appealing it. I'm pretty hopeful that you'll be able to get it back. Any other questions?
I just want to say something. I don't think anything worse than being stuck in a small apartment, alone, isolated, day after day after day. So I really appreciate the fact that you occasionally will stop by and see the client. I was in that situation where I'm isolated. I go back to Warm Springs before I go back to being that way again.
100%. It's really, really difficult. And yeah, so when someone is housed, we go visit them. I try to make a point of visiting them every day, at least for a week, just helping with that transition. But what we've also found is getting radios or TVs is really helpful just to have something in the background. I've had multiple clients tell me that while they slept really, really great last night, it was far too quiet and it freaked them out and they could not fall asleep after a certain point. If you like to do donations, houseless shelters really love pocket radios and headphones. That is a major thing. Or if, someone who's just getting into housing, donating a TV and a DVD player or a radio is very helpful.
Yeah, we're going to have auditory hallucinations and watch television and radio. That probably make a bad situation.
Totally. It's different for everyone, right? I saw a question over here.
Are fair housing laws useful in trying to get landlords to make reasonable accommodations?
Yes, 100%. So I was really sick of landlords telling me that I couldn't, they wouldn't take a client because of XYZ, and I was like, wow, that sounds really illegal. So my lovely mother paid for me to get my property manager's license, and I took the 32-hour course, and I just wrote down everything that could pertain to anything that we've been experienced. Yeah, that we've experienced, and because of those classes, I've been able to tell landlords, no, don't you dare tell me that, because that is very illegal, and I can report you. And they back off, and we get the person in, and we get all the necessary supports with them. Fair housing is super, super important. I would love to see it expanded, though. Montana does not have an income discrimination law. They also don't have a discrimination law against houselessness. And when we look at statistics where houselessness is often correlated with mental health or co-occurring substance use disorders, we could make an argument that that is disability discrimination. At least I would like to make that argument. So making a more clear and flushed out idea of what fair housing is in Montana would be really, really important.
Nor does Montana have a right to housing.
Yes. Yeah.
Last question.
I bet you guys are really assertive.
Yes. We call ourselves a professional annoyance.
Is there any outreach between, sorry, I don't know how to phrase it. If somebody moves into an apartment at to a complex and they have a criminal history or a mental illness, is there communication obviously between you and the landlord and the other residents to stop any kind of shunning, inappropriate behavior or between the other residents and the person moving into it?
That's a really good question, and I actually would love if we had that. So there's this kind of stopgap once someone gets housed and once someone gets, supports, but we need someone who's just dedicated to long-term housing, just like housing support specialists. We need more of those in Montana. And if we had more of those, I think we would be able to do more of that like liaisonship, because I've definitely seen my clients, once they get housed, being completely ostracized from their community and their new space, or the landlord is picking on them, and that makes it really difficult.
I'd like to just wrap this back down around to NAMI, because family members are really important when we have those gaps and we need someone long term. There have been many clients where after PATH has gotten them housed, it's like, and if they refuse PATH services, then what? You know, then I'm on my volunteer time going and knocking on their door going, how are things going? Did you get rent this month? So learning how to, you know, establish relationships with families and staying in contact with them. Hey, you know, stop by and check on your mom. How's she doing? Running and checking with the psychiatrist in the center and saying, hey, has so-and-so showed up for their, you know, medication? Can I go get her? You know, I'm really not supposed to do that. But it's because we don't have that longevity piece. So yeah, we grow to really love our clients. Oh, I just wanted to close out our presentation with a personal story. So I became aware of PATH when I was a young adult woman. My mother was not able to be in my life because she struggled with co-occurring substance abuse and a major mental illness. When I became in my mid-20s, I took a chance and went to her home, and I found this lovely woman there named Gwen Peterson. I did not know it at the time, but she was a PATH lead in Billings. And through her support, my mother became housed. That's how I was able to go visit her. And she had been on house for about 15, 20 years. And I knew she was struggling with mental illness. And that was, so after PATH got her housed, got her stabilized on her medication, she was able to be in my two older daughters' lives. That was the best place I've ever seen my mother. And I had those wonderful years with her. So PATH is really meaningful to me. And thank you for letting us share what we do.
That was an amazing presentation. Great job. And great job, Jamie, for saying you have to have these people at this year's conference. So, what a wonderful thing. And it's nice because it's a horrible issue all across the state, all across the country, and for the real people that do that work every day. Thank you. So we're going to have a break until 6 o'clock, when dinner is going to be back here at 6 o'clock, 6 to 9. There's a silent auction in the back. We're gonna have the NAMI Hero Awards, and then mental health comedy by David Roberts. So make sure you get here. It's gonna be great. And if you coordinated with Colleen for special meals, talk to Colleen. Thanks, everybody. And for anybody that's not going to be here, we do start again at 9 a.m. tomorrow with Dr. Ken Duckworth, now a best-selling author. So we're excited to have him. So 6 o'clock for dinner, 9 o'clock tomorrow to start up again.
Good day. Good day.
You did. And you can relax tonight. Because you don't have to present.
Yeah. That's nice.
Enjoy yourself. Like I was going over my head.